Welcome back to the Azura Media Club, the home of the bad girl coven. This is your coven leader, Emily here. We are talking about National Treasure. One of my favorite movies of, all time, probably. I don't know. I'd probably put it in my top 20 at least. I remember when it came out, I was, obsessed with this movie. I loved this fucking movie. I had it on my iPod. Actually, I don't have the iPod, but, the old classic brick iPods that you could put videos on. I had it on there. And what was cool about it, I would watch it on there all the time. That and Team America and, a bunch of other stuff. But what was, Good Burger was on there. What was cool about that iPod and that, setup, though, or that file, specifically of the movie, which I probably still have somewhere, is it had extra scenes. It was deleted scenes, I guess. They might have been. I mean, I suppose that they are, because they're not in the regular cut of the thing there. And I don't remember if I saw them in theaters. I do remember going to see this in theaters with my dad. We definitely saw it together, and I do remember that. We were super excited for it, because I used to be super into history. I loved history. American history. I was so into it. That was my second best thing. My subject in school was history, because I just read about it all the time, and I loved it. I used to read. I need to do that more, but history fascinated me, and I still like it. I don't think it's boring or anything, but I was the nerdy kid who they put out an extra credit assignment in 7th grade or whatever. One of our teachers for a history class, and he's like, name every single president in order, and you get I don't know, 50 or 100 or something points of extra credit. It was an insane amount, and I'm like, well, I could probably do that if I study hard enough. And lo and behold, I was the only one who did it, and I think I was the only one who had done it in a long time, or maybe the only one to ever have done it, but I did it. I got the credit. It was awesome. That's how much of a nerd I was about history back in the day, and it's actually kind of one of my lost things from my childhood that I used to be sort of obsessed with, but I loved hearing about it. I loved seeing it. I remember we went to DC and they played this movie on the bus, and they make the joke about little families from Iowa and eighth graders on their field trip, and that was me. But I'm from Iowa. I was an eighth grader at the time, and we were like, look at that, they're calling us out. That's kind of funny and shit. So I did go and see the Declaration of Independence. I was right where Nick Cage stood, right there at the archives and all of that. I do vaguely remember that, in my head. And the one thing I remember is the guy on the tour who was, talking about it. He's like, and we won't make you pay $35 for a copy, in the, in National Treasure or whatever. Or he didn't say that, but he said, in some movies or something like that. I don't know. We all thought that was pretty funny. At the time, this was a big deal movie, everyone knew it, and everyone loved it, and for the most part. They used to play this in school all the time, whenever we would have, a break day or something, it's I mean, they used to play all sorts of random crap in school, but this was, educational, and I'm just like, okay, if you said this is educational. I mean, it was kind of educational, but, but that's what's cool about the movie, too. It has lots of history in it, and it does do a pretty accurate job at representing a lot of that history, They get you intrigued with the mystery and stuff. It's a more modern, yeah, a modern, because he was in, the 30s and the 40s and stuff, Indiana Jones. They take a lot from Indiana Jones, too, like I said in my Indiana Jones reviews, which none of you saw, so, at least the third one, where I actually referenced these similarities, so let me refresh you on that one. So there's a scene in the Indiana Jones 3 where Sean Connery is talking to, Harrison Ford there, his son and father, And he's like, I found Alexandretta. That's where you got to start. And he's like, Alexandretta, and he's like all excited and stuff. It's exactly like the scene right after they steal the Declaration of Independence. And the spoilers, by the way, everyone knows he steals the Declaration of Independence. I mean, that is like the most, like one of the most memed Nick Cage lines. Is like, I'm to steal the Declaration of Independence. Oh, I'm Nick Cage. You know, like fucking everyone knows that shit. Anyway. So there's a line in this movie where there's a scene in this movie where he's talking to his dad, like when he first gets introduced to his dad, we get introduced to his dad. I mean, it's not technically true because he was in the first scene and you see him a little bit, but when we first officially see his dad and him in modern day kind of thing. So there's a line where they're talking about, I found the Charlotte, and he like goes into it and he's like, it's talking about all that. The difference is that his father in this movie is very, like, he doesn't believe in the treasure. I mean, he used to believe in the treasure, but he kind of gave up on the treasure, and he even says it in that scene. He's like, I believe the treasure is a myth that they invented so that the British would spend all their time looking for the treasure rather than being involved in the American Revolution so they could win the war and all that. So, which is interesting. You know, by the end of the movie, we know that that's bullshit, but, so the movie starts off when he's younger. Benjamin Franklin Gates, who's our main character there, played by Nick Cage. Not younger Ben Franklin, but, or Ben Franklin. Ben Gates, but, the older one did. So he's like there at his grandpa's house. He finds this book about the Templar treasure, and his grandpa like tells him this whole story, about Charles Carroll and how he had this piece of a clue to, a big grand treasure that is like world spanning, and it's like every treasure throughout history combined, as it would change hands, it grew bigger and bigger throughout time, and, it's like this national mystery that nobody has ever figured out, the worldwide mystery, and, like, that's what I'm talking about. Like, Indiana Jones was after, like, the Lost Ark, the Holy Grail, big things. But, like, imagine if all of that... Imagine if he was, like, looking for that, like, Area 51 warehouse worth of treasures. Like, that shit. Like, that's how big the treasure ends up being. And I just remember fucking... I mean, we'll get there. We'll talk about that in a bit, because... Fuck it. Let's just talk about it now. I remember when they get to the end there... when they're, like, down there, and then he, like, fakes out Ian, and I'm like, okay. Like, the first time, I legitimately also thought, like, oh no, he has hit a dead end, and this is it, And then they send Ian away, right? And then they go into the next room, and then he also, again, thinks that the treasure is gone, and seriously, when I saw that, I was like, oh my god, because, like, the way they're doing it is, like, it's a great scene, but the way they're doing it is like, you're right, there is a treasure, and we believe in it, and we're gonna help you find the treasure, and everyone's like, yeah, I'll help you, and it's like, because the movie's like 2 hours in or something at that point, you're just like, oh no, sequel bait, really? Oh no, but I was fucking pumped, I was ready, I was like, hell yeah, motherfucking National Treasure sequel, let's do it, bitch. But then they pull the wall from under you again. He finds a little thing with the pipe, and he's like, oh, can it really be that easy? And then he puts the pipe in, swings, like, boom, there's the treasure. You're like, oh my god, look at this room full of treasure. This is crazy. And then, you're like, oh wow, you're just like marveling over everything in this tiny room of treasure. And then he like lights the thing. All this shit lights up down there, and you see like down there, so much fucking treasure, infinite treasure, and you hear the music, and it's like da 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 da, and you're like, fuck yeah, look at that shit, look at that fucking treasure. That's a national treasure if I ever saw it, so always one of the greatest moments, because the music and the visual, it all just culminates, and the adventure is at its end, and they found the treasure, like, fuck yeah, like, that's how you feel, and it's great. And I always, that scene is just always so You know, it's so satisfying to see. It is so incredibly satisfying. But there's a whole movie before that, so I just want to talk about that because it's like one of the best scenes in a movie like this. Because you know what? And I mentioned it in my Uncharted reviews on the other channel. I fucking hate it that people, they find all this fucking treasure and they don't get anything out of it. Now, okay, yes, I know Ben Gates doesn't technically get that much out of it either because he donates it to the world or whatever, but he gets something out of it. And he actually finds this massive treasure. Every time somebody, Indiana Jones or somebody else finds a treasure, it always gets taken from them, or it always, you know, ends up falling away or something, like with the Holy Grail. It's like, come on, where is the one where we get the treasure, you know? Especially when you're playing a video game. You don't want that shit to just be out of your reach. You want to have your character get that shit because you did all the work to get here, and you want there to be a happy ending where it's like, yeah, fuck yeah, he got bazillions of dollars because it's fucking Nathan Drake, you know? But it's like, okay, then we don't have sequels or whatever. But of course he's still going to want to go treasure hunting, even if he's fucking a billionaire. He's not going to care. He's going to want to still go treasure hunting. That's his passion. I know, money changes people, but it's like, come on. You know, I mean, it's... You could still make games and stuff after that. You know, it's fine. And I mean, if he's got more money, he's got more money to invest in digs and, like, all the archaeological stuff, you know? It's like, come on. Like, come on. No. Anyway. Let's go back to the beginning. So, you know, and then it cuts to modern day. He's out in the Arctic. They're looking for this ship called the Charlotte, because the secret lies of Charlotte was the clue that he gave to the kid in the intro, who was his great-great-grandfather. And they find this thing, and you can see Ian's there. He's Sean Bean, and you know, you got like Riley, and the girl who comes in later, but they find the Charlotte, they like dig it out, and then they're like in there, like looking around. They find the pipe in the barrel there, and they find the little engraving on the scroll, and you know, it's like, what is it? The key in silence, undetected, something, blah blah blah, 55 an iron pen, Mr. Macbeth can't offend, you know? Something about affected, right? It's like the stain affected or something. Basically, he figures out that, you know, he's got this like Nick Cage-ass moment where he's like sitting there, he's like, wait, the iron does not describe what is ink, it describes, you know, or describes like the feeling of that, and he's like, it was a resolution? And they transcribed a resolution? Like, does that really resolution? That thing. I always remember that. Every time I hear that word, resolution, I always go, resolution? You know, so... Anyway, he figures out there's a map, an invisible map, and they do this in both movies. There was never a map in either movie, but he's like, there's a legend, a key, that's a map, right? And it's like, no, it was just clues. Like, there was never a map. And they always say, oh, there's a map, and then it's like, there's not a map. It's like, it's just another clue, you know? So, it's kind of a map. I mean, the clues lead you there, so it's like, you know, but, anyway, so, yeah, so he finds out that this shit, like, there's a cipher or code. He thinks a map, right, on the back of the Declaration of Independence, an invisible map that nobody can see, and it's, like, written in invisible ink and all that shit, you know? So he has to, like, try to... And Ian's like, oh, well, you know, we should probably steal it. And he's like, we're not gonna steal the Declaration of fucking Independence. And so, Ian, like, there's, like, this tense moment where they're like, all you're gonna be in is a nuisance now, and he, like, does this thing, he lights up, because they have, like, a gun pointed at Riley and him and whatever, and then he lights up, like, a stick of dynamite and, like, throws it down, you know, the whole ship goes up in flames. He goes into this little hole that somehow protects him, I guess because he's in the snow or something. I don't know, you think it'd just melt through that. I have no clue. Anyway, Ian gets out, you know, he runs off to go steal the Declaration of Independence, and then they make their way there. They try to tell the FBI. They try to tell, Department of Homeland Security. Nobody believes them that they're gonna steal the Declaration of Independence. That Ian will. But then he goes to the National Archives, which is where we meet Abigail Chase, which is the lady I was mentioning earlier. Another main character in the movie there. And she's like the head of watching over the Declaration of Independence, basically. And he's like telling her about it, and he's like, we believe there's an encryption on the back, and she's like, an encryption, like a code, and he's like, yeah, cartograph, and she's like, oh, there's a map on the back, and he's like, yeah, it's an invisible map. And the whole time Riley's like, that's where we lost the FBI, that's where we lost the Department of Homeland Security. And she's like, you're treasure hunters, and he's like, no, we're more like treasure protectors. He's like, so what led you to, fucking think that there was this map on the back of the Declaration of Independence? He's like, well, we found this pipe out this hundreds of years old ship, and she's like, oh, a pipe, can I see the pipe? And she's like, he's like, no, we don't have it, sorry. She's like, did Bigfoot take it? So it's a very quotable movie, which is another thing. I randomly think about scenes from this movie in my head sometimes, and I can like quote every line. But I've seen it like a million times. Not like an actual million, but like dozens, if not, like 30, 40 times. I don't know. I used to just watch this movie as I was like coming up with ideas for books and stuff, like I used to put it on in the background and just like do other stuff too, I watched it so many fucking times. I played video games on the side of it, which is exactly what I did this time. You know what I did? Played RuneScape, AFK, magic grinding the whole time. So, on the side while I was watching National Treasure, and it was fun, it was awesome. It's like, just like the old days. I probably played RuneScape while watching National Treasure back in the day. So, yeah. But yeah, I'd watch it on car rides. I'd watch it everywhere, It was a big deal movie. We had the DVD, my mom did, and my dad did. So anytime I was at one of them, I'd see it. And yeah, I remember like both of my parents enjoying it too. Like my dad especially, because he was super into Indiana Jones and stuff. And I think at that point, I hadn't seen Indiana Jones, but it was like shortly after that he showed me Indiana Jones or something. Yeah, so anyway, which part of the movie were we at? So right, they talk to her, she doesn't believe them, so they leave, and they're like, okay, he saw this like flyer for this gala that's gonna happen there. And he's like, alright, I think we've got a shot at this. Riley, like, they're standing there talking about it. He's like, Riley's like, it can't be stolen. It's impossible. Like, let me prove it to you. So then he, like, takes him to the archives, or the Library of Congress, not the archives, Library of Congress, and they're sitting there. He's, like, showing him blueprints and stuff. He's like, okay, it, like, gets, sealed down in this fucking vault with, like, access denial systems and shit. And he's like, little families from Iowa, and all that shit, all that stuff that he talks about. And he's like, Ben's got a plan. He's like, we're gonna do it at the gala, and we're gonna, at the gala. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, we're gonna do it when the gala is happening, because there's gonna be less security down there, and we're gonna, like, do all this stuff to get it lowered down into the preservation room, so it'll be easier to steal. And Riley's like, yeah, this might be possible. And he's like, it might. So they go and do that. They set up all this stuff. There's a montage of scenes of them setting all this up. He, like, takes a picture of a guard's, like, ID badge, and then, like, inserts his face on there. So he not a guard, but a janitor. So he pretends to be a janitor going in there. And then he, like, crashes the party, basically, by being just, like, another guy. And he shouldn't have talked to Abigail at the party. He does do that, I think, to make sure that she got the little pin thing so that, he could have her fingerprints or whatever. But he didn't need to talk to her, and I think if he didn't, A, we wouldn't have that character in the movie, which would be worse. But also, B, he probably would have gotten away with a lot more, and maybe even have gotten away with the Declaration of Independence before they noticed that he was even doing it. But he couldn't help himself. He had to go talk to Abigail Chase, because she's pretty and whatever. But yeah, he, like, takes her drink, because this other guy had gotten her a drink. So it's clever, because then he was able to, like, use the invisible ink stuff to, like, get the little fingerprint so that he could use it on the elevator to get down to the archives. Whereas Ian, he just takes a whole route around. He, like, goes through the sewers and, like, comes up, and then he's, like, breaks a bunch of doors and stuff. Honestly, I think Ben would have had a better chance if Ian hadn't broken in. But also there might have been more guards and stuff down there. I don't know. The whole thing was like the guards were distracted up at the party and there was only supposed to be a couple of guards. So, and he's invisible on the video, the surveillance cameras, because Riley put a feed in there. But then his feed gets cut off and like Ian takes over the feed. So there's that. And then right as he's in the room trying to get the declaration out, like, he's trying to unscrew the thing. Fucking Ian comes in at the same exact time. He grabs the thing when the feed gets cut and he, like, goes for the elevator. Ian comes in and you can see him, like, they're, like, across the hall from each other and, like, both open the door at the same time and he looks and he, like, starts shooting at him and shit. And, you know, he gets in the elevator, he unscrews it, he gets the declaration in there. He has that whole infamous scene with the gift shop where he's in there and she's like, "You trying to steal that?" And she's like, "It's $35. And he has to pay with a Visa. And that's like the whole thing, is that they're gonna like be tracking him because he used this Visa. So they knew who he is and stuff. So yeah. But then Abigail Chase chases him out as he's leaving with the Declaration of Independence, and she, like, catches up to him at the van, and she's like, "What's going on here?" And he's like, "It's a souvenir," and all this stuff, and it's like, technically he was accurate with that, because the one that he gives her is a souvenir. He bought a duplicate, that's the whole thing. Like, there's this whole chase scene after that, where Ian's, like, trying to chase him down, because he sees that they got the Declaration of Independence, and Ian wants the Declaration of Independence for the map. So there's a whole chase scene there, and they finally get it at the end, but then they realize it's a fake, and they were already gone when they realize that. But they get back Abigail, and they like show her that they have the original, and she like tries to take it and stuff, and they're like thinking about their situation, and he's like, "We need to go find the Silence Do-Good letters," and she's like, "Oh, did you steal those too?" And he's like, "No. I know the person who has the originals," and all this stuff. And so they go and see his dad, because he's supposed to have the original Silence Do-Good letters, but he gave them away, was the whole thing there. But he, you know, in the meantime, it was like that scene with the Charlotte and stuff that I was talking about, and his dad doesn't believe in the treasure, because he's like, "You're going to find a clue on the back of the Declaration of Independence, but that's all you're going to find is one more clue." But anyway, while they're there, they, she's like, "Oh, let me handle it." So she takes the little thing, and she's like, "I'm gonna get fired for this." You know, she, like, scrubs the lemon juice over the top of the Declaration of Independence on the back there, like at the top corner, because that's where a seal is supposed to be if there's, like, a hidden code there. And the dad's like, "You need heat." So they, like, blow on it, and you see, like, the little codes start going up. So then they, like, start hair drying it. I mean, that cannot be good for the Declaration of Independence to be, like, hair drying it, but, you know, what do you do, I guess. And then he finds out, and then they tape him up to a chair and just leave. They change clothes. There's a whole scene there where, you know, they're talking and about how his dad thinks he was too cavalier in his personal life and all that, and they have a nice little scene together, Ben Gates and Abigail there, and afterwards, well, in between that, you see, like, this kid is running up to the Silence Do-Good letters, because he donated them to this Ben Franklin thing in Philadelphia there. Um, and he's reading the individual letters because that was what the code was. It was an Ottendorf cipher to show the letters on the Silence Dogood letters that you need, the letters within the letters. So this little kid keeps running back to Riley and like giving him the thing, and it's the vision to see the treasure pass. Something about casting an untimely shadow in the house of Pass and Stowe, which is like the Liberty Bell is what they end up finding out. And they look at the back of $100 bill, and like there's like the time on there, I guess, is the time that they're supposed to go there, which is like 3:22. And so they go there, and they like watch the shadow as it like falls on this other building. So they go and they go there, and there's like a brick there with a Mason symbol on it, so they cut it out, and there's like the little X-rayed spec glasses deal, like 3D glasses looking things there that like Ben Franklin invented or whatever, and they can, if they read that on there, it says here at the wall, which is like the corners of Wall Street and Broadway or whatever, where there's this church, the Trinity Church, which is where the treasure is at. So yeah, so then they decide, okay, I'm gonna give you guys the Declaration of Independence. I'm gonna take all the other stuff, and we're gonna separate. And Ian ends up catching up with them and getting the Declaration of Independence. Ben gets away, but then the FBI gets him. So then they're like sitting there talking to him. Ian calls him. They like, when he gets to the pier where he's supposed to meet him, they devise this whole thing to like get him away. They interfere with it and shit, and he gets away, dives into the river. They kind of mentioned that earlier, how he's like a professional diver. They say that like twice in the movie. So you kind of get that vibe. They set up a lot of things like that, which is nice, you know. A lot of little forward references. I like to believe every time they were talking about aliens, that's a forward reference to page 47 or whatever from the second one, because that was always our theory about the third movie, is they're going to do an Indiana Jones Crystal Skull and do aliens, but I think it'll be interesting. I'm still waiting on that. I still want to see a third movie, for sure. They had the show. That was great, too, but they even tease it in the show, so they fucking better make the third movie at this point. I think the show did well enough to warrant that. Hi. So, yeah. But, he escapes the FBI. They go meet at the church. They see on the back of the document it says Parkington Lane. They captured his dad too, by the way. So, they see it says Parkington Lane. It says beneath Parkington Lane if you like, because like the whole thing is there's like multiple lenses, so you have to like lift them up to like see that other message or whatever. And they end up finding out that it's this dead guy who, behind his crypt there, or behind his grave there, is a winding staircase that leads down to where the treasure's at. You know, all this time in between all of this stuff, there's like lies and betrayal and all this action and stuff, and it's great, and it's all super well done. It's super interesting, and this movie's like 2 hours something long, and it really does not. Oh, sorry, wrong one. It really does not feel like that. I mean, it is just it's an hour and, it's 131 minutes long, which is, yeah, like 2 hours 2 hours 11 minutes there. So, yeah, but I mean, oh my god, it is just so much fun to watch, even if it is like an over 2 hour movie, which I have problems with, but this is the kind of movie that deserves it. Every movie wants to be this movie, you know, when they're doing that extra length, or The Dark Knight, really, but you know what I mean. So, but yeah, I mean, you know, and then I said, of course, they end up finding the treasure down there, and then, you know, happy ends and whatnot, but, it leads all into the sequel, which is a great sequel. I love that. It's pretty much just a perfect sort of treasure hunting movie. They find an epic treasure at the end. There's a lot of good humor. The actors are all good, and actresses, they're all really good. The mystery, the intrigue, the historical aspects to it is cool, weaving this story throughout historical stuff and conspiracies and all this stuff. It's great. It's just, it feels like such a well-rounded movie. There's not really a single piece of it that falls short, in my opinion. So, just really excellent. At the end of the day, it slaps. As the kids like to say these days. It's fire. It's lit. Yeah. And the soundtrack is just so good. Let me see if I can get to the treasure thing. Oh, here we go. Oh, apparently Pikmin, the game's released physically. I just got a reminder about that. Cool. I'll have to look into that. Anyway, so, yeah, just a really excellent movie. I didn't really know who Nick Cage was before this, I don't think. A lot of people probably didn't as much. I mean, a lot of people probably did, but, this really put him on the map for me. Like, oh my god, this guy's awesome. I love Nick Cage now, it's like... And I do, I like a lot of his movies. He's really good in most things he's in, so... So good, though. Like, especially this scene is just so fucking excellent. Listen to that. Oh my god. So good, this music. You really get the vibe. What are you doing, silly boy? Of, like, how epic it is, And it's just an epic movie all around. It's so much fun to watch. The action is really good. The characters, the like I said, the intrigue, the mystery of the whole thing, the legacy of like this entire historical treasure. It is the treasure of all treasures, It's like, it's great. And, yeah, of course the sequel, it's like, yeah, the City of Gold. I mean, that's pretty cool too, but it's like, this treasure is like, wow, like, I would love to see the third movie, whenever the fuck that comes out. I love this. It's a perfect 2-movie thing, but they intentionally set it up for a third movie, and then they never made it. And I'm just like, what the fuck is happening? Make this movie already. It's one of those, mythical thirds, where they keep saying, like, Ghostbusters 3 or something. It's like, they keep saying they're gonna do it, and then they don't do it, and it's like, I don't know. I really... I just want to know that it's not just something in my heart or in my head, like he says in the movie. People don't talk that way anymore. Yeah, but they think that way. I want it so bad. Where's National Treasure 3 already? Oh, man. That's the real National Treasure, the third movie that we'll never get to fucking see. They better get everyone back for it, too. Like, he's still with Abigail in the show. Like, he's not in the show, but, spoilers for the show, by the way. But he gets mentioned in the show. Riley's in the show for, like, a one episode, Thought he was going to be more of a character, but I guess not. Even he's busy these days. So... Oh, God, just listen to that. It's so good. I used to just listen to the soundtrack, too, especially while I was writing, because it's... Oh. It's peak shit right there. Listen to that. It's so good. Wow. Yeah, it just gets you hyped. It's such a great movie. It's so good. It's perfect in a lot of ways. I mean, for me, like, I love it. I'm gonna give it a 10 because it's amazing. But I could see where people might think it's like overrated now or something. But back in the day, everyone fucking loved this movie. I'm gonna tell you that much. So, for the most part, it definitely, and that was the thing. It played on my love for history too at the time. I was very much more into history at the time, and I like hearing about history and stuff now. I'm just not as like passionate about it as I probably used to be. So Um, but yeah, so what a great movie, National Treasure, 10 out of 10. Um, so until next time, this is Emily saying subscribe, stick around to join the Bad Girl Coven, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Emily out.